अच्छा जी, कल हमने we did let me see what we did yesterday. बच्चों आपके स्कूल से क्या क्या अपडेट हैं? ज़ैनब इसने बीकन हाउस ने क्या अपडेट दी है ऑनलाइन क्लासेस के बारे में,
सर
एग्जाम्स
बस
के बारे में?
कल आखिरी दिन है, उसके बाद बंद हो रहे हैं।
नहीं वो तो ठीक है, लेकिन आपकी क्लासेस हो रही हैं ऑनलाइन टिल 24th, या फिर आर दे गोइंग फॉर एनी अर्ली ऑनलाइन एग्जाम्स, या फिर क्या सिलसिला है?
नहीं सर, क्लासेस हो रही हैं, एग्जाम्स जनवरी में होंगे कह रहे हैं, खुलने के बाद ही।
And same is the case with you, Rabia?
So we don't know anything right now.
अभी असल में स्कूल्स वाले कुछ डिलिबरेट कर रहे हैं बिकॉज they don't know if the schools will reopen on January, but चलें whatever the case is, इंशाल्लाह उससे हमें इतना फर्क नहीं पड़ता. Okay, so इंशाल्लाह we are going to end this topic tomorrow. कल का तकरीबन पूरा दिन मैंने आर्टिफिशियल सिलेक्शन के लिए रखा हुआ है क्योंकि इस पे जरा क्वेश्चंस काफी होते हैं. So all of the small chunks that were left today, inshallah, we're going to finish that. So I'm going to begin with थोड़ा सा मैं सिलेबस की सीक्वेंस के हिसाब से आप नोट कर रहे होंगे कि नहीं जा रहा, उससे कितना कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता इंशाल्लाह विद दिस टॉपिक. So today we are going to talk about the molecular evidence of evolution. उसमें दो चीजें हैं, and then we will talk about extinction, और फिर कुछ mathematical type चीज है if you like. It's a very simple thing, Hardy-Weinberg theorem, that inshallah we will talk about. So let me begin with the idea of molecular evidence first. So molecular evidence of evolution. Okay. अच्छा जी, अब अगर आपको याद हो, when we were talking about evolution, of course the idea that they have proposed about evolution. किसी का mic on है और मेरी आवाज इसमें फरियाल बच्चे, can you please mute your mic? Thank you. Okay. So you know, there are two molecular evidences for relationships. असल में इसको आप ये समझें, for evolution भी है, लेकिन molecular evidences for relationship between species. Yani ke, what does this idea mean? The idea is that they have used some evidence at molecular level to prove that some species, like for example, a rat and a mice, they are closely related. Yani ke unka ek common ancestor hai, as they put it. Now, there are two ways with which this idea has gained popularity. The first one of them is through amino acid sequence of proteins. Amino acid sequence of proteins. ठीक है जी, इसकी डिटेल हम अभी बात करते हैं. And the second thing is nucleotide sequence of mitochondrial DNA. Nucleotide sequence of mitochondrial DNA. ठीक है, अगर आपको याद हो तो माइटोकॉन्ड्रिया का स्ट्रक्चर जब आपने पढ़ा था रेस्पिरेशन में, जब हमने पढ़ा था, तो we clearly saw that there is this DNA loosely lying around, and this DNA is actually different from the DNA of the nucleus, which is a linear DNA. ये circular DNA होता है basically, which जिसकी implications इंशाल्लाह हम आज देखते हैं. But these are the two things that they saw and they deliberated on, and they proposed the idea that it proves basically at molecular level for evolution. So let's first talk about amino acid sequence. Dekhiye, you understand that when we are talking about, when I use the word sequence of amino acids in protein, uska matlab hai ki, you know, when we are talking about sequences, what that means is sequence is very important. Like for example, in the case of sickle cell anemia, you know that just because of the substitution of one base, you had an entire amino acid, changing, and therefore the entire shape of the red blood cell going from biconcave to sickle celled. Uh, in लोगों ने क्या किया? What they did was they basically the principle on which this thing stands is that when amino acid sequences of a particular protein is compared in different species, the number of differences give a measure of how closely related they are. Yani कि, for example, similarity or closeness, if you like, in sequence, of course, sequence of amino acids, is basically giving them some idea of how closely related the species are. Closely related species are. And they've actually picked on one amino acid, and let's see, let's see if you remember that. Cytochrome C. Cytochrome C. Anybody remembers? This is back from topic number 12. Small c, not capital C. हाँ जी, किसी को याद है कि नहीं याद? Cytochrome C is basically a component of electron transport chain. ठीक है? It's a component of electron transport chain जो आपने oxidative phosphorylation में पढ़ा था, part of the complex of proteins through which, you know, the electrons they pass through. If you remember, I mean, of course, I don't need to go into that diagram again. They basically took different organisms and they compared the cytochrome C in all of those organisms, or unki similarity ki basis pe, the basis on the similarity of the sequence of amino acids of cytochrome C, they basically concluded how closely related some organisms are. Like, for example, they basically compared, उन्होंने तीन लोगों के साथ compare किया. They compared this cytochrome C amino acid sequence for humans, for rats, and for mice. Okay? That was basically the experiment that they did. And they found out some important findings. And those important findings were the following. Number one, they saw that all three molecules from all the humans, mice, and rats, it composed of 104 amino acids. यानी कि एक तो common similarity हो गई that the cytochrome C from humans, from the mitochondria of humans, of course, and then rats के mitochondria से जो cytochrome C है और mice से, all of them have this commonality that they have 104 amino acids. Okay. But what stood out was that the sequence of mouse and rat cytochrome C are identical. Sequence of mouse and rat cytochrome C is identical. What did they conclude from this? They concluded, and of course, the sequence of humans was not very similar to rats. So therefore, what जो उन्होंने conclusion निकाला, वो ये निकाला कि mouse and rats are closely related, which means they have a common ancestor. That's basically what they concluded from this particular experiment. Okay, common ancestor. Okay, so that is one way that they have used molecular evidence to prove their theory, and that is by showing the amino acid sequence of proteins. Okay. And the second thing was the nucleotide sequence of mitochondria. You need to understand the linear DNA. थोड़ा सा मैं side पे होके आपको समझाता हूँ. Linear DNA is that typical DNA that you know, okay? But circular DNA is something like this. Now, you need to understand that there are some differences in both of these structures and therefore some implications. उन्होंने basically what they did was they compared the mitochondrial DNAs, and what they saw was that there are three main reasons. Basically, mitochondria, सबसे पहली बात ये है कि we need to understand they took this from the mitochondria. That's the mitochondrial DNA. इसकी abbreviation जो लिखी जाती है ना, that is mtDNA. So that you know we're talking about mitochondrial DNA. Now, each loop would generally, if that's the mitochondrial DNA, generally it would contain almost 37 genes, generally speaking. You don't need to know this number. Yeah, it's only that I'm trying to explain. It's 37 in humans, okay? और जो न्यूक्लियर है उसमें तकरीबन कोई 20,000 के करीब होते हैं. So that's a stark difference that we have between mitochondrial DNA and the nuclear DNA. Now, you need to understand that we need to understand why the mitochondrial DNA was a major tool used for studying evolutionary relationships. Now, we need to understand reasons why, and I'm going to list those reasons. The first thing that we need to understand is mitochondrial DNA is highly conserved. Kya matlab? What do I mean when I say it's highly conserved? See, you need to understand that mitochondrial DNA is a loop. ठीक है? और अगर ये, if it's a loop, then do you think it will be able to undergo what is known as crossing over? क्या ख्याल है बच्चों? That's a question I'm posing. Do you think this circular DNA would go through crossing over that you saw in meiosis, the bivalents crossing over? अगर आपको याद हो non-cystic chromatids में, the way we saw it in meiosis, do you think this will be possible with a loop of DNA? Well, the answer is no. No, that's not possible. Not possible. Crossing over is not possible because of its circular nature. Okay, crossing over nahi hoti, which means that the DNA of the mitochondria cannot easily change unless there is mutation. Or इसमें mutation के chances भी are very less. Okay, so that's the first thing. That basically is a reason why mitochondrial DNA is used to study evolutionary relationships, because you over a long period of time tends to stay the same in terms of DNA because crossing over वगैरह इसमें नहीं हो रही. ठीक है? The second reason that you need to know, मैं यहाँ पे line लगा के इसको इधर लिखने लगा, second reason. So please don't get confused, okay? Okay. The second reason that we need to know is that mitochondrial DNA, ये बड़ी interesting बात है, जो mitochondrial DNA है, that is inherited from the mother side. That is inherited solely from the mother. और उसकी reason है, I'll just explain, from mother. And the reason is because any sperm mitochondria that enter the fertilized egg are destroyed by the embryo cellular machinery, okay? So the only possible way a child can inherit the mitochondrial DNA is only from the mother, okay? So that is, again, one of the reasons why this is used as an evolutionary tool to study basically evolutionary process. And ये जो आपके हैं, I mean, over a long period of time, how do you study DNA from fossil fuels, for example, like materials such as bones, teeth, or hair from very old or decomposed specimens? उनके पास there will be very little nuclear DNA. I mean, talking about bones, teeth, आपको पता है कि ये चीजें हैं, these are the things that are actually not prone to decomposition, so they tend to stay longer, okay? Bones, teeth, and hair. इनके ऊपर the nuclear DNA does not remain for long. Okay? But यानी कि वो basically it tends to be broken down by enzymes, and the reason is because it is broken down by exonucleases, broken down by enzymes. So the point is we cannot use bones, teeth, and hair to study nuclear DNA. Lekin these bones, teeth, and hair, they do contain many copies of mitochondrial DNA. Okay, and you know that this mitochondrial DNA is less susceptible to decomposition. So therefore, we can use this for the study of evolutionary purposes. ठीक है जी. आपकी textbook में, again, as I reiterated yesterday, when I'm doing this topic with you, I'm expecting you to spend a lot of time actually going word to word of your textbook. आपकी textbook में topics अच्छे दिए हैं. This is the last topic, one of the last topics that your textbook has. And basically, it's a very small topic. ये वाले topics are rarely assessed. मुझे extinction, खासतौर पे जो last topic अभी हम करने लगे extinction, मुझे तो उसका कोई भी past paper में question नहीं मिला. लेकिन still, that being said, it's part of our syllabus and we don't want to take risks. So let's quickly talk about what's extinction. Extinction क्या है बच्चों? ये तो general knowledge का question है. I mean, how do you think I should define extinction? क्या ख्याल है? If I pick and choose Zainab, how will you define extinction? कोई बता दे. Come on. It's the disappearance of species. ठीक है? It's the disappearance of species in simple words. ठीक है? Or if I were to go into details, यानी कि at some point in time during the existence of most species, अगर हम ये कहें कि the rate of mortality, excuse me, is more, yeah, exceeds their rate of reproduction. Their rate of reproduction. ठीक है जी. So I mean, mortality का मतलब होता है, mortality has to do with the life expectancy and death basically. So अगर if they're dying more than they're reproducing, then eventually, I mean, they will die out. Okay, so that will eventually lead to what is known as extinction. फिर दो terminologies हैं extinction से related जो कि आपको पता होनी चाहिए. Of course, this is a extinction is not just a 1 or 2 week process. It's a process of millions and millions of years. एक term है जिसको हम कहते हैं mass extinction. Mass extinction, and there is this theory of mass extinction. I'm sure that you have read that in stories when you were small, and that is almost 65 million years ago. They say that, you know, excuse me, कि जी एक comet hit किया था Earth को, which caused the extinction of the famous. Can anybody tell me? Nobody? Come on, dinosaurs को शौक नहीं है किसी को भी? Dinosaurs वाली story निकल गई है. वैसे अब बच्चों को वो और पता नहीं क्या चीजें होती हैं, उनको शौक होता है. But anyhow, dinosaurs. So the extinction of dinosaurs is a classic example of mass extinction that happened in the history. ठीक है? और फिर उसके अलावा there is another, you know, between these mass extinctions, there have been, if you like, lower rates of extinction, और उनको हम कहते हैं background extinction. Background extinction. Okay. So, I mean, you can consider this as a lower level of extinction. Okay. ये वाला topic जो है extinction का, ये कुछ related. The reason why you won't find this question in topicals for this topic is because इसका relation है एक अगले topic के topic सा जो कि conservation. I mean, if I were to ask you how do we what are the reasons why extinction happens, so the answer is usually due to human activities. ठीक है? यानी कि human activities, and top on the list is basically destruction of habitats. ठीक है? So if I ask you, बच्चों, let me ask you a question. आपको मेरे background की आवाज ज़्यादा तंग तो नहीं कर रही? Can anybody tell me? Can you hear something at my background? Somebody talking? Is that too loud? Is that too loud?
No, it isn't.
Others, is that too loud? या फिर ठीक है?
ठीक है सर.
पक्की बात है, मेरी अम्मी गप्पे मार रही हैं किसी से और वो बिल्कुल मेरे कमरे के साथ बैठी हैं. Let me close the door. Wait. Okay. Apologies. I can't. मैंने अम्मी से कह दिया ना, इस तरह बोले तो प्रॉब्लम हो जाएगी काफी. So I hope you understand. Moms are moms, you know. Okay. Anyhow. ठीक है जी, तो ये आज के लेसन का कुछ बोरिंग पार्ट था जो कि मैंने पहले खत्म कर दिया है. प्लीज आई रिक्वेस्ट यू गाइस to please take out some time and read this boring stuff. And I know it's boring, but since it's part of the syllabus, और मैंने पहले भी acknowledge किया था इस चीज को. This one topic is very boring, and I honestly don't enjoy that much teaching it. But anyhow, since it's part of the syllabus, we have to do it. चलें जी. Now we come on to something very interesting, and that is Hardy-Weinberg principle. बड़ी मजे की इक्वेशन है और इसके क्वेश्चंस जो हैं वो बड़े इजी होते हैं. लेकिन उससे पहले देयर इज अ स्टैटिस्टिकल टेस्ट, जिस तरह हमने इनहेरिटेड चेंज में देखा था, बिल्कुल इसी तरह देयर इज अ स्टैटिस्टिकल टेस्ट दैट यू नीड टू नो, एंड दैट इज अबाउट, wait, let me show you the question. Yes, it's a T-test. Okay, I think where's my pen? Oh, okay, चलिए जी, मैं नया पेज लेके आऊंगा for T-test. Okay, now T-test is a statistical test. Again, do you remember the name of the statistical test that we did back in inherited change? Chi-squared test. कोई मुझे बताएगा please, what exactly was chi-squared test all about? If anybody remembers. Okay, चलिए मैं आपको बता देता हूँ. It's okay. You know, T-test सबसे पहली बात है again it's a statistical test. इसका जो formula है is the following, and of course when I write this I categorically am saying you don't need to remember this formula. The only reason I'm giving you this formula is because you need to know what it looks like. So you have over n1 over n2. ठीक है. और इनमें से जो इंडिविजुअल चीजें हैं, what do they mean? x1 means mean of the sample, x2 mean of the sample. आपको क्वेश्चन में उसने सारी चीजें दी होती हैं, standard deviation and all of that stuff. Majority of this detail has to do with paper 5, but since it's part of this topic, we are going to do it anyway. All of the other stuff that we did, for example, the p value, the critical value, ठीक है. और आपको मैंने बताया था कि बायो के अंदर जो हम क्रिटिकल वैल्यू यूज करते हैं दैट इज 0.05, और उसका आपको टेबल दिया होगा. यू जस्ट नीड टू कम अप विद वैल्यूज. सो all of that is the same, but what exactly is a t-test? That's what we need to understand, and why on earth are we using it in this topic? देखें, T-test is a statistical test that can be used to find out if there is a significant difference between means of two independent groups. Let me write that down for you. Used to find out if there is a significant difference between the means of two independent groups, between the means of which makes no please. Okay, I'm sorry. Acha ji, sorry. Used to find out if there is a significant difference between the means of two independent groups. Independent groups. देखिए क्या मतलब two independent groups? Let me contextualize. See, you have to understand. मैं आपको ना इसकी example आपकी textbook से ही देता हूँ ताकि जब आप revise करें, so it's easier for you. By the way, there is a separate topic that they have dedicated in your textbook. If you don't know, that's the last topic, the 20th topic. Okay. Or chi-squared and t-test. ठीक है. चलिए मैं आपको इंशाल्लाह कल एक पास पेपर दिखाऊंगा, उसमें प्रैक्टिस करेंगे. But all I want you to know is ये टी टेस्ट को मैं हार्डी वेंगबर्ग से पहले, there is a reason I am discussing that. So I just want you to understand that again, since in natural selection and variation we are talking about, like for example अगर हम variation की बात कर रहे हैं, and if you're talking about continuous variation, we are talking about two groups, for example, for which we are comparing heights. अब इस comparison में we use t-test to find out that if there is a significant difference between the two group means, for example, of two samples of two classes जिसमें हम height को देख रहे हैं. Okay, and why is this related with natural selection? Well, इंशाल्लाह भी मैं हार्डी वेंगबर्ग थ्योरम की बात करता हूं तो आपको उसको समझ में आएगी, लेकिन just to give you a hint before we go to our traditional 1 minute break, you need to understand that yesterday we talked about allele frequencies. Okay, तो अगर किसी जगह पे evolution नहीं हो रही, if there is no evolution, and if we compare allele frequency of the past with the allele frequency of the future, given that there is no evolution, technically the allele frequency should be the same. यानी कि difference नहीं होना चाहिए because there is no evolution. If there is a difference, then we use t-test to see is that because of a significant difference या फिर वो एक random difference है और उसको हम ignore कर सकते हैं. That's the context. So let's go for our traditional 1 minute break. When I come back from the break, inshallah, we will continue with Hardy-Weinberg theorem. Chale ji, I'm ending the session. Please rejoin in a minute.